will be able to, oh, thanks. We'll be able to, get folks up to speed. And if need be, I can always meet with people individually to go over some of this information if they feel a little left out of the discourse from the video if they're watching it later. So, first off, thank you everyone for coming. It's very nice to see everybody's block. Um, and so, welcome. We're going to do a lot of like just sort of reviewing. It's going to be a lot of information. So, if it feels like a fire hose coming at you, it's because it is a lot. We're going to do a little bit of hands on, lots of examples. And anyway, just two ground rules. Nothing in this room or nothing in this presentation requires you to acquire gear that you probably don't already own or have access to. And two, the goal here is to support you in always moving forward in developing your thought leadership. Um, you know, Pressing record, if you will, both literally and figuratively. And also, nothing's ever going to be perfect on the first try, and we'll fix as much and edit as we can, right? So moving on with our slides, here's our agenda for today. I'm not going to go through it all like individually, but we're going to be we're going to be thinking about our persona. We're going to be thinking about equipment, at different levels. And we're going to think about how that's going to mesh with how we're envisioning our podcasts and our approach to it, our approach to interviewees, and then kind of the path of least resistance and getting started and keep moving forward. And then we're going to do a bit of an activity together, and then we're going to talk about your podcasts and sort of finish up with some Q&A. So first up here, I just wanted to share this slide. So podcasting is very interesting. 10 years ago, it was truly a great experiment. It was do it yourself. A lot of the do it yourself was, not exactly what people envisioned going out. It was very flat. It was only on audio. Folks were not very good at like recording. They didn't quite know what was up in terms of how to get things online. So there was this expectation, and the reality, kind of was like this on the right. But the heroic efforts that were required to make things sound good and now look good are truly over. And just wanted to share a picture here. In many ways, the modern era of podcasting we owe to actually this person. His name's Mark Maron, and he's a comedian, and then he also did a lot of radio work in the early 2000s. His career kind of faltered a bit, so he decided to try his hand at a new thing called podcasting. He set up a rig in his garage. He knew a lot about radio already, and he started interviewing his friends. And he really demonstrated that podcasting could be a way to reach out to folks, to be a leadership in your field. Because not only did he talk about comedy, but he also talked about political discourse and the meaning of language and how it impacted how we thought about things. It was so popular that Obama, at the end of his presidency, actually came to his garage and was interviewed. So, just a little thought there. But truly, this marked the era of, the do it yourself being such a heavy lift being over. So, there's a couple of different things that we want to think about when it comes to putting together our podcast. So the first here, we're going to go left to right. Last week you filled out your canvas, and I put the word canvas here because that's truly like a little gloss, a shortcut, if you will, on thinking about what your podcast covers, your voice that you want to have for it, what it looks like, the through line, if you will. This is your role, your stance, what you're doing while you record. That is your persona, who you are when you go to that mic, if you will. So, whereas the show concept is the canvas, you the persona are making it all move forward. And then what you have to think about is, who are you speaking to? Who is your audience? So the audience is separate. The audience is the one person in your earbud that you need to think about, and who you want to be taking action based on your thought leadership, what you are saying. You also want them to tune back in, right? So that's the sort of through line that we're thinking about. And then the technical piece all follows through from this. So you have your format, your mic, your room, your platform, and your post production. It all speaks to your canvas, your persona, and your audience. It's all supporting it and all cyclical and speaks to each other. So, with that, and we think about how we get started in making our our podcast a reality, now that we have our canvas and we've been thinking about our persona already, what kind of equipment do you need? And a lot of folks get very caught up in this, and it's very, very actually quite simple to think about. You can record an episode this week if you have these elements. And so you can see them here. There's just 6 things in order of how much they affect your sound and look. The first thing is you want to have your microphone. If you don't have a microphone, you're going to often sound muffled. I'm speaking right now without a microphone, and this is a little bit different. It's a live sort of session. It is being recorded, but it's not really meant to be an enduring piece that's, communicating my thought leadership. A microphone makes sure that nothing is lost, that the tenor of your voice, everything, the story you're trying to communicate to your listener reaches them. To that end, you need some headphones, especially when you're recording. What you don't hear, you can't fix. So when you're recording, having those headphones, being able to hear very clearly what is happening, background noise and the like, is absolutely essential. The lighting almost means more than the camera that you use. So right now I have on my light here. You can see very quickly if I take this light away, I'm in shadow, because the thing here is we're not just recording our podcasts. That's a very antiquated idea. I mean, there's still a lot of podcasts, and some that we're going to be talking about today still only have recording, but there's a visual piece to this as well. And we really want you as podcasters, as thought leaders, to embrace that. So having good lighting, being able to see what's going on is absolutely essential. And then you have your video, using your cameras just fine. You have your setting and also how you're going to put all this together, which is your editing piece. So what about these microphones? What kind of microphone should I be using? That can be really overwhelming. If you go into Amazon and type in like podcast microphone, if you are a little fancier, let's say, and you go into B&H photo and you start looking around on there, different sites, you'll see 100 recommendations and literally hundreds of different microphones you can choose from. So there's 3 different kinds to consider. The first of these are dynamic mics, and these are great because they reject room noise. So that is really great if when you're thinking about, do you have kids around? Do you have a yowly cat? So that's a good thing to think about. And you can see here the way it's positioned, often just right toward the mouth. It's great at capturing conversation. A condenser mic is a little bit different. You can see this here. This is, from a company called Yeti, Blue Yeti. They make these condenser mics. This is best for a treated room. And we'll see a picture of these. So a treated room is often one, if you've ever seen like someone recording in a studio where they have maybe some styrofoam put around, so it's capturing any kind of ambient sound, and it's very clean sounding for you to speak into a mic and tell your story. Obviously, you don't need a studio. You can have a closet, you can have your office, and we'll talk about room setups in a little bit. And the last one, and I really do recommend if you can afford, and there's all kinds of different prices for these, is a lavalier mic, especially if you're by yourself and you're recording and you're using a video camera as opposed to your computer. Lavalier mics like attach here. You can see these have a clip on them. If you've ever seen like someone on remote for the news, they have a lavalier mic attached to them. And it's a great way to make sure, especially if you're interviewing someone in person, that you do not lose their um, conversation on video. The other thing that's nice about this particular brand, by the way, this is a company called Rode. These mics actually are set up um, to record the the voice as well. So you have the voice in two different locations. So you're not just depending there. Now, mics plug up in different ways, and I just wanted to provide in this slide deck here what those connections can look like. A lot of times they're USB or they're USB-C, and they plug right into your laptop and the like, and they'll look like this. And you can see here, that's what the USB-C looks like. And this is not shocking at all. And then probably a little less standard for the general user is something called an XLR type of plugin. This is like if you start going up the chain of equipment. Now, we'll come back to this. We're going to look at two different examples, and we're going to talk about what we can improve in the examples. So this is two different brands that I really like. The other, I've talked here before about the Rode Wireless Labs. Even nicer now as they've upgraded, they started doing these things in color. So you can have like a personality and a brand for your podcast that goes along with it. The other brand, this is showing Rode, but Logitech and Yeti are also two other really great brands for very trustworthy microphones. So I just really suggest that when you buy microphones and headphones and the like, that you always look at reviews and people's experiences using the equipment in the field. Next up, headphones. You, as I was saying before, you cannot fix what you can't hear. There's a couple of different types of headphones to consider. The one thing that's not really recommended when you're doing any kind of podcasting is depending on sort of Bluetooth, AirPods, or any kind of pod like recording or headphones, excuse me. When you do that, you can have a delay. You can actually miss some ambient noise or sound that may not be caught by the pods. So wired over the ear sort of headphones are actually the best. And here's some pictures here of, these are some of the issues that you can catch when you're recording with headphones. Other opposed of things is like weird hums, kind of the air conditioning clicking on, other sort of sounds that you don't want in there. And then here I've included for your reference some of the different types of headphones that we are recommended. And probably some of the least expensive are these types of in-ear headphones. Really great at making sure you're catching any kind of sibilance or anything that's happening. The other type of headphones that are really recommended are these sort of open back headphones, and then also sort of the wireless noise canceling headphones. And then there's some information right here about that. So as I noted before, if you have a bad pop or you have the AC kicking on, you probably heard me in the very beginning saying, we'll fix as much as we can in edit. And that means after you're done everything and you're putting it together, the one thing you really want to make sure is perfect on the first go out is the sound. It is very, very difficult to fix sound that is not right in the first place. So you want to make sure people are mic'd up. You want to make sure you don't have any hissing, chairs moving. You want to make sure that you have that set and to go right from the beginning. And it doesn't have to be a big price layout. Here's like a really nice budget pair of headphones that'll really do the trick. And then, of course, you can go all the way up to into the hundreds of dollars. As I was mentioning before, lighter matters more than you think. Again, it doesn't have to be a struggle. So I just wanted to go over a couple of things about lighting as we're going along. You're going to want to always keep your camera at eye level. If you don't, you're going to get some weird things. You can see right now that my camera is not quite at eye level because I'm doing a presentation. But if I move my camera this way, it's just too far back and I actually disappear. If I bring it too forward, it starts giving like a weird, strange angle there. So having it right at the horizontal is absolutely essential. And here's some information about how to keep that level. So having it at arm's length distance is also very important. Otherwise, you can just get way too close and it's a bit distorted. Having a bit of headroom is also important. Once you start having too much or too little, it can look unframed. And also thinking about the background. Can't stress that enough. If you don't think about that, you might want to use a green screen. You might have a nice wall in your house. Thinking about like a bookcase or whatever, that's all part of the branding as well. You don't want a lot of chaos in the background unless you're trying to communicate chaos. But in general, wanting to keep a nice, tidy, sorted look. So the one thing about lighting is it's not quite as easy as it seems. I've included here just a diagram. This is a 3-point setup. And this is used like in film, any kind of interview situation. Not only is there just one light like overhead, there's the key light, which is the most important. There's a backlight to kind of make sure the person is, fully lit up. And then a fill light to make sure that the person is not disappearing off stage. And I thought it would be best if we could just watch quick video where this is demonstrated. It's a 1-minute video. So.
3-point lighting is one of the most commonly used lighting setups. Not surprisingly, it's based on a 3-point system. The key light is your brightest light and is best placed to the side of your camera, creating depth and contour in your subject's features. The backlight is positioned behind the subject and separates them from the background. The fill light is placed opposite of the key light and is used to control the contrast of the shadows. 3-point.
So one thing I do want to point out here is she's looking at
point system.
This is called a diffuser. If you start doing more elaborate setups where you're using more equipment, you'll want this because you don't want to shine like a terrifying bright light into your own eyes or that of your interviewees. You probably won't be at this point just yet, but I did want to provide that information. The main thing that you'll want to have right now is something like this. If you are doing a beginner self setup, I have this particular selfie light, they call it. It's rechargeable, and it's also you can change the temperature of the light, and I'll go back and show that to you very quickly. It's inexpensive, and I just want to show it here. It's going to let me. You can see it clips onto any place, even though you can't see the clip here. and it's very easy to use. So this kind of acts as a key and a fill light on its own because you're using it at a closer range and it's a much more intimate sort of setup. The other thing, as I mentioned, is it does let you change the temperature of the lighting. And one thing you're going to want to do for these types of setups is make sure that your lighting is not warm. Warm lighting is going to create unnecessary shadows and your video will not be as crisp and clean. And again, it's just going to be that much harder to clean up in post. Um, if you have more sophisticated equipment, you can actually tune it to 56,000 Kelvin. Um, but if you don't have that, you can change the temperature on your little mini light. If it'll let me do it. Anyway. There we go. You can see like the temperature is actually changing on this, and it's not going to work as well at the darker level as it is on the lighter level. So here again, keep it the brighter, whiter tone of the light, looking more toward blue as opposed to the warmer brown. Here, using more of a diffusion if you are using more equipment for your light to make sure it's directed properly and isn't blinding. And keeping in mind that you can start off very powerfully with a small piece of equipment and not worrying about buying major pieces of video. Again, start here with the back of your camera. Absolutely, some of the best filming can take place if you have a decent higher range iPhone or Android camera. Other piece, very inexpensive, getting a really decent webcam, as long as you can get to 1080. However, it is recommended that you do try to have a 4K camera in order to be able to control and have the best possible output. If you have more money to spend, you can get a mirrorless camera. It's absolutely not necessary. Those can range up, between like 500 to 1,000 US dollars. But you do not need that. The one thing I would recommend if you are filming with an Android or an iPhone is to have something they call it the selfie monitor. This is to let you know as you're using the back of your camera to film yourself, having that monitor will let you know what is being captured on the phone for your recording knowledge. So just a final note, making sure that you get to the highest resolution as possible. That's 4000K. You can always output at a lower sort of 1080p, which is really good for like YouTube. But in order to do that, you should record at that. So this is what I was talking about before when we were talking about building a real recording space. The room is going to be very important. If you probably don't want to record in the kitchen or next to your washer and dryer, especially if you're using them, you know, anything that has a lot of ambient noise where people are coming in and out. The first thing as you're doing your setup is like treating all the reflections, things that are going to allow sound to bounce around. This is why you don't ever see film studios or audio studios painted like bright white. The sound is going to bounce everywhere. You want to have a uh, darker walls are best. You're going to want to try and hang some foam panels. These foam panels can come like as packaging if you receive anything in the mail. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy anything. You can also hang up some dark sheets that also can kill ambient noise. You're also, making sure your mic setup is right. And we're going to look at some of that in a moment. You're going to want to make sure that your levels of your recording equipment, keeping it to 12 dB. When you're recording, I'm sure you've seen this before where as you talk, like you can see the needle move. You don't want to have that move into the red, keeping it below that. So the other thing is if you are using an online medium to do recording, such as Zoom or Zencastr or Camtasia, make sure that you're recording locally as well as online, because you never can trust your connection and so on. I know that Zencastr does have that backup to make sure you don't have any sad feelings after a long bit of recording and it didn't take up to the cloud. So what about that studio layout? So here I've put together just sort of a sample, and I want you to keep in mind about like where you might be recording. And this is what I envision for a studio room in my own house. So I actually have some larger pieces of equipment. So for my studio, I have a wall here with a window and that I can face. And so you can see like what a difference that makes when I start looking at the window. And then I have noted here where I'm going to set up my key light and then also my fill light to make sure that I'm fully shown and visible on camera, where I'm going to have my mic. And then also, if I have a guest, where they're going to sit, and noting that, okay, I'm going to put a carpet down so I have a quiet space and a quiet room. And then also, I also have like a little closet set up for an acoustic emergency, if you will. So making sure that I can go in there in case people are over and I can't get a quiet space. I can go into my closet and do the recording as well. So in terms of editing, this is, the final piece that we think about when it comes to equipment and thinking about our equipment and how we're going to keep things edited, how we're going to put things together. So I thought this would be an interesting sort of way of showing an example. So when we're thinking about editing, though, I do want you to keep in mind that there's a couple different buckets that are available. And this is completely different than it was even last year. And this is always evolving. So the first editors, are the more traditional ones like Adobe Audition. These are larger scale sort of programs where you put something in and then you manually put in different types of video edits. The second bucket, these are newer, and these are AI helpers. And these are great for sort of first wave pieces where they will take your video and slice it up. And we'll be looking at this next week in terms of creating some social media. And then the third sort of bucket is more of like what the type of editing I do and you'll be doing. And that's kind of the screen and video. And this is where you put your piece online into an editing type of software and you'll be able to manipulate it with B-roll and the like. So first, I'd like to show you a bit of an example, and I'm going to ask you some questions about what you think is going right in terms of the setup that's being used and what could use some improvement. How is everybody feeling in terms of the information I'm giving? It's a lot of details so far. Is there any type of equipment that has folks most concerned right now? Aviola, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I've also been doing research before now, and what you are sharing is like opening my eyes to, some other parts that I have not even researched into, which has given me some other ideas that I can put into it. So I really appreciate you sharing this, and it will go a long way helping me to re-strategize. Thank you.
Is there anything that's most concerning? This is a safe space, by the way, so I don't want you to think I'm putting you on this. I'm putting you on the spot, but it's not meant in any way to cause harm. But is there anything that is most concerning that about the information that I've gone over or brings up a lot of questions?
Yeah, nothing too serious. I'm just thinking if I'm able to get all of this for myself and
Mhm.
my guest who is not going to be with me physically, who will be joining virtually, will they also have the same setup that I have? How am I able to, work out to be sure that whatever quality I get at my own end, they also
Mhm.
get it at their own end? So those are the things running through my mind.
That is a fantastic question. And I have a slide about this. Most of us are going to be recording remote, right? So you never know what folks have on their end, what's going on. I remember doing an interview with someone and they suddenly like jumped on a subway train. And I'm like, oh my God, and I could see them moving around in a crowd um, as they were answering questions. And it really impacted the quality of the interview, right? So ways to get around that is asking them up front about the recording situation, where they're going to be on that day, making those kinds of plans in advance. Sometimes folks with larger budgets might send some inexpensive, pieces in advance to those who were being interviewed to make sure that they have the means to be able to be up to par, if you will. But we can talk about that more when we get there. But Josephina, I wanted to ask about your reactions as well so far.
Yeah, I also yeah,
Oh,
really
Josephine, I
appreciate
can't hear you. I'm sorry.
um can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, yes. It sounded like you sounded far away. And so
Oh, okay, okay. I think yeah, I just changed my microphone, which I'm actually not sure how I have two options because I'm just on my computer. But anyway, I'm glad that you can hear me. Um
mhm.
Yeah, I also appreciate all the detailed information. Definitely a lot of equipment that I haven't encountered or even heard of before, so it's really helpful. And then also good to know that to start out, we can, or I can kind of use some equipment that I already have, like wired headphones or um, some more kind of basic equipment that I already have, and then potentially kind of expand from there.
Is there anything that's most concerning to you?
Um, I think not right now. Yeah, I don't feel concerned about anything. Yeah, I think um yeah, I'm just digesting the different information right now. And I think it's helpful, but I don't feel concerned, but I appreciate yeah, checking in about that. I think I'll probably start with yeah, some of the equipment that I have at home, and then as I continue working, explore or find some of these other options as well.
Yes. And it's one of those things like it's always going to be a work in progress, even though like I understand this piece about 3-point lighting.
Mhm.
I'm still am terrible at like making sure in my own recording life to have this set up on my own. Like right now, I'm guilty of only having the key and not the full thing. As you can see, the big difference here, and just wanted to point out, I have 2 points of light right now. I have my window. Without this light, I would have this sort of side only raking light, and that looks terrible, right? I mean, and then the light from behind is just so um creates a strange silhouette. And then having the overhead, creates an interesting sort of Halloween raccoon look. But
Yeah, there I can.
but
Yeah.
it's a lot. And especially like I can only imagine if you're new to this and I'm talking about 56,000 Kelvin scale with the color temperature, it's probably like what. But don't worry about that. You'll have access to these slides, and I'll also be available to answer questions. And truly, you don't need to do all of this all at once.
Oh,
And
okay.
as
Oh,
this,
that's
oh
Oh
yeah,
no, I was
yeah.
just gonna say, yeah, it's helpful to know that we'll have the slides after. I was trying to take a bunch of notes, so I'll
Oh yes, yes. No, you'll have this, and then we also have the recording.
oh
The
right,
other
okay.
thing I do want to note here is, when I went through that schematic, the geometry of the setup, regardless if you are using all of the bells and whistles or no bells and whistles, they pretty much stay the same. So right now, I have all 3 points of light. I have a backlight, I have my front light, my key light, and then I also have my fill. So that's all the same, even though I'm not on a movie set. So you can like approximate everything with just a bit of effort. So
Mhm.
no matter if you have starter, if you have the fancy finishes. So,
Yeah. I
and
do have one
then
question slightly
go ahead, please.
related to the equipment piece. Would you recommend definitely, even with our first few episodes, trying to do video as well? Like I definitely think like the podcasts I listen to, it is nice when they have video, but I was thinking, at least for the first few, just doing the audio, as I'm kind of getting used to the that equipment and maybe recording the video and saving it, but not necessarily doing the whole setup for the video and planning to release the video.
So we had anticipated folks doing video,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm going to show you an example in just a few minutes how to sort of not say get around like being on screen, but how to visualize and create a YouTube video friendly podcast that is engaging to watch and also listen to. So,
Okay,
and
that sounds great.
that comes down to this editing piece. So now let's do our little activity after checking in. So, um, I do this with a lot of love, uh, but this is an early draft that our friend Saad had shared with us. And we're also going to share a draft of a video that I did. We're going to talk about what was great and what wasn't quite ready for prime time, and also like how we could improve it. So, first up here is Saad.
Hi, did you know that about 500,000 children under the age of 5 die from diarrhea every year? And that we have a simple and inexpensive treatment that has proved effective for over 50 years. In fact, it is estimated to have saved anywhere between 50 to 70 million children
Okay, so
from deaths.
okay, that's a better way to stop it. Just Abiola, Josefina, watching this and listening to it, can you point out a few things like where you would have suggested to Saad to perhaps revisit or have maybe change a bit in his setup?
I think I want to have different clips shot from different angles and merged
Okay.
together to become one.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, and I may also want to have a caption on the screen, especially for those who may not be able to catch whatever I'm saying. You know,
Mhm.
that will help.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Josephina, what stands out when you hear and listen and watch this?
Yeah, I was thinking about the lighting piece and potentially having lighting from different sources, or maybe kind of like front on, because it seems like it's maybe coming from one angle.
What about his audio?
Um, it didn't particularly stand out to me, but maybe I don't have as much experience like evaluating audio, or maybe would you be able to play a couple more seconds of it?
Sure.
Due to diarrhea. However, there's a small catch. What's that, you wonder? The catch is that we are not using it enough. Oral dehydration solution, or ORS, can help.
Hmm. I guess if I'm trying to compare it to other videos or podcasts that I've heard, it maybe sounds a little bit more muffled, or like it's not coming from like a microphone, like a separate kind of crisper audio source.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, it almost sounds like he's in the room and I'm listening versus other videos and podcasts. It sounds like it's directly in my ear, kind of.
Yeah, no, that you raise all good points, and also around what we call Section 508 in the US, around making sure that the content is accessible to those who might not be able to see or hear as well. So, and now we'll share a couple seconds of this one. This is a video, and it's deliberately edited a little strangely, but this is a video we
or
made
BCPH.
about the
My
agency.
colleague and I founded BCPH, a 501c3 nonprofit association, in 2021 with a simple mission to democratize.
So, do you notice anything based on what we were discussing before about like what could be improved or updated here?
Can you play one more time, please?
or BCPH. My colleague and I founded BCPH, a 501c3 nonprofit association, in 2021 with a simple mission to democratize public health. Name
All right, this looks a lot better. I mean, considering the video added to it, which will considering the age that we're in, that people have short attention span, so you have to ensure that you have some things to keep them glued to the screen, which has been added from this video, you know. And then I think the audio seems better than the previous one too.
I think the one thing that and Josephina, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I also like I feel like the audio sounds more clear to me, and then the lighting also seems to be a little bit clearer. Like maybe there's lighting from multiple angles. And then the background is nice. I feel like that adds um some kind of cohesion to
So,
this clip.
oh, Dr. Carpenter.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are being parsimonious in your interpretations. The reason Dr. Cersei is asking you is so that you can be just as critical when you're analyzing your own podcast in terms of whether or not people are going to continue to listen to you versus if they're going to tune out in 2 seconds. So I agree with those points. The other thing, I'm a big person about posture and where the camera is. I think you're a little too close to the camera. I think your shoulders are hunched up, and I do think the lighting has a long way to go from being ideal.
You are, yes. So I recorded this in a hotel room and I didn't have access to a desk and I was sitting on the bed and I'm like, it looks like I'm haunting the camera the way I'm so close to it and I'm kind of almost over it. And I'm about to show how to do some B-roll in a second. This had nothing very active or anything. It was just me on screen, very similar to Sod. And you know, Sod is making some really wonderful points here, but when I look at this shirt he's wearing, it's begging for a microphone, right? And um, the same with my setup. I didn't have, like, it wasn't ideal for a mic. However, having just, a lavalier right here, it would have made all the difference. And also, if it had been able to sit as opposed to a hunch over, that would have been helpful as well. But let's look at just an editing sort of workflow. And I think that will help make this all a little bit clearer. So, and please don't ever feel like, oh, I can't say anything because, they're right there. I have a, that was done in like an unusual circumstance and I have a good sense of humor about it. So if you, as someone who's starting out in editing and doing some workflows, this is taking a while to load. That's very strange. Pardon me. So one of the starter places that you're going to have access to for this type of work is Canva and also Envato Elements. And I'm sure that's in your workbook already. In Canva, they've been expanding its capacity and its capabilities in terms of AI and the use of that. Not in the negative way, but in helping to make this process a bit easier and handling workflow when it comes to video and images, and also adding elements like transitions and music. So think back to what Sod's video was like before. And now we're going to look at Sod's video with a bit of B-roll. So B-roll is essentially video that has been recorded and added to a data bank and you can access it. It's often rights free or the rights are associated with, I have a subscription to this service. It's called Envato Elements. You can get stock video, you can get stock images and the like, and you can add them to your projects to elevate them. So in the case of Sod's video, he was talking about working with babies who had gotten sick. I'm sorry for the quick sick babies is kind of a strange thing to look for, but I found some videos that were quite nice. This one and also this one. And I downloaded them and then I added them to the workflow for his video. I also found this video. Canva has its own workflow as well when it comes to images and different assets that you can add. So you can add some photos, you can add audio, and you can add different videos. And it makes a big difference. So here's Sod.
Did you know that about 500,000 children under the age of 5 die from diarrhea every year? And that we have a simple and inexpensive treatment that has proved effective for over 50 years. In fact, it is estimated to have saved anywhere between.
So suddenly you not only have like a talking head that you're watching for your podcast, you also have video that captures the attention as well. The other thing, Josephine, as you were saying, where maybe you didn't want to be on screen yourself, you could visualize your podcast using video. A very simple example of this is what we did with Buffy Jameson, who was on last week. This was an earlier version of visualization. You can see here, we just had her profile photo that we made into a cutout, and we had it over her video so you could watch it, and it kind of kept your attention as it was moving around. This is a much more sophisticated approach to that. You can easily see how I could take out Saad's video here. One thing I want to make clear is if you do this, make sure first that you remove the audio from it so you're not, erasing your voice from it. But once you do that, you can erase yourself and just have the video.
Under the age of 5
So
die
here's
from
Saad
diarrhea
talking.
every year, and that we have a simple and inexpensive treatment that has proved effective for over 50 years. In fact, it is
I was able to go in and balance his voice a little more and raise the volume of it as well. So here I've made it quite loud because he didn't use a microphone, so it was quite muffled. I can't fix that muffled sound because that's just something that's just going to be part and parcel of the final product, but I can enhance it enough so that you can hear it. The other thing is I did add a little bit of a background music. Now, notice here, I kept the level at a very low range, just 9. So it's just there as a bit of a soft sort of nice sound. It kind of also cancels out some of that muffled feel to Saad's delivery, which isn't his fault. It was just the recording condition. When it comes to putting together video,
about 500,000
you're
children
going to want
under
to be
the age of
careful.
5
You'll see here that piece where the video kind of bleeds into another. That's called a transition. That is created very similarly across different platforms. If you do not have a transition, you will the video will jump from one piece to a next without
children under
warning.
the
It'll
age of
seem
5
very jarring. Here, the transition just allows you to create a flow to one piece to the next, and you can like choose different ones. You can have a wipe, you can have a line wipe, circle, did it circle, that's kind of cheesy, by the way. The more modern one really is the one I use. It's called Match and Flow. And then the other one that is a bit more sophisticated is to dissolve
under the age
into
of 5
one another. And I can create this workflow is available publicly when you go into our Canva instance, and you can go in here and sort of look at how I did this and use this as a testing ground for what you want to do with your own work. So kind of practicing in advance. The other thing is you want to sort of illustrate what is happening with your B-roll video. So here,
anywhere between 50 to 70 million children
he's talking
from
about
deaths due to
children around the
diarrhea.
world.
However, there's a small catch. What's that, you wonder?
And
The
then he's
catch
asking
is
about
that
what
we are not using it enough.
he's asking a rhetorical question,
Or
and there's a
BCPH.
rhetorical question piece. This is the workflow that I wanted to show as a practice for a video like this. So this has better sound and the like, but was very, very boring in
My
the background. And I want to point out, having things set up in the beginning is just absolutely essential to like fixing things later in post. I cannot fix the fact that I am hunching over and looking at the camera weirdly. or that I'm sitting awkwardly on a bed. You can just sort of see that in the video. I can't fix that.
And I found a BCPH.
However, I can make it look a little less boring. So one of the things I did was I added an image to it, and this just happens to be our logo. So let's practice that. You can go in, you can upload pictures to Canva of your own. You'll probably see yourself in here. So, we can add, whoops. You can easily add a picture. If you add it all the way, it'll cover up the video. So don't do that. You just pull it in. Let's say you want to cover up for some reason the logo with this little word cloud. You can do that. And then it's right there. You can also see where it's landing in the workflow here, and that it's above me. If I pulled this down here, you wouldn't be able to see it anymore because this is above this part of the workspace. So it's here. I can make it bigger or larger. The other thing you can do, and this is kind of one of those pieces with AI that's very, very helpful. You can click on this and generate a 3-second video of a static image. It may not do it very well. This particular image has a lot of text in it, but all it does, stop that. You could see that I did that process already with this
BCPH.
particular image, and
My
it created
colleague and
just a
I
little bit of
found a
dynamic
BCPH, a
movement.
501c.
The other thing you can do is you can add a bit of looks like a news program above your head where video is moving.
In 2021 with a simple mission.
And that's very similar to what we did with SOD. We did the side by side, and then I demonstrated where we could detach the audio from the original video, and you could remove SOD altogether. We could do that here with me. Let me show you an example of doing that. I'm just going to push. Let's do the side. So if I want to do, are you able to see this part that says extract video? Yes?
It says extract audio.
That's what I mean. You can detach the video or you can extract audio. Okay. This down here is all of the audio that I'm saying. If I do this, whoops, I can now do this.
Or BCPH.
And I'm still talking.
My colleague and I founded BCPH, a 501c3
Did you know that
nonprofit.
So that's just a way to make video more interesting. I can answer more questions one-on-one about the editing process. But truly having a really good setup to begin with, so you don't have to worry so much in post, is just really, really key. So audio, most important. And then when it comes to recording, how you're sitting, the setup, what it's capturing, and your lighting, also extremely important. If you do not want to appear on screen, then you need to consider how you're going to handle that. I do recommend that you do appear in the beginning, in the middle, and the end of your piece. Otherwise, it might just be a little bit odd. But you want to create very dynamic, engaging pieces that push forward story of your podcast in a way that makes sense for your audience. It furthers your canvas, it furthers your persona, and it meets the needs and activates your audience. So going back here, again, You have your 4 tiers here. These are just kind of packages of different types of equipment setups that you're going to want to think about. So most of us are going to be doing this. We have our phone, our window, and then we can just start recording. Because you have your camera, you know, have a nice backdrop based on having a nice bookcase, and then just keeping in mind as much as possible that 3 points of light, trying to avoid having that raccoon look with the shadows around your eyes. Then even better yet, having, a tripod. You can see here, this ring light really makes a big difference. That's kind of what I have going on with this little mini light here. Having that sort of noise canceling mic that really is directed at you to capture your voice, and also speaks to the recording as well, that process. And then thinking about if you do have an opportunity to meet with folks you want to interview in person, keeping in mind how to replicate or approximate that recording ideally when you're on location, and how you're going to do interviews. Also thinking about how you might be doing them remote. And then, of course, once you get up into like the $700 range, you're becoming Mark Maron, and you have like your full vodcast studio. Equipment has become much more attainable in price in recent years. And you could really very easily get up to speed and have like a full vodcast studio. Whereas before, this would have cost like, $7,000-8,000. You can do it with a couple hundred instead now. So truly, upgrading as your podcast grows is just going to be pivotal. So next here, just sort of thinking about presentation and interview approaches. So we're going to look at them. We have like 5 different approaches, 5 flavors, and they really do speak to how you set up and record and edit as you move forward with your podcast. So, the first of these is kind of that audio first, something solo. Perhaps you have a co-host and you're just speaking about a specific topic. And there you can see this kind of setup is ideal for this. It's great if you're by yourself, or if you do have someone that you're speaking to, as she's kind of doing in this photograph. It's also more of a homegrown, in-person sort of setup, especially if you have the other person. Sort of the talk show interview, especially if you're doing it online, this is really ideal. I actually saw someone recreate this in a live conference setting, which was very intense and it was very powerful. But the challenge here is like how to juggle people online. So you're going to want to really have your script and your outline of what you're going to say very much in place. And that's where having that very strong canvas and persona will help make this process even cleaner moving forward. This is really great, a great place to like leverage Zoom. There's also other recording apps like Zencastr and Riverside that do this as well. Everyone's going to have like a dedicated tile, but this is also something Abiola brought up. You're going to want to make sure you do a lot of planning in advance to make sure that your interviewees are going to be as set up and have as clean a recording as you. Otherwise, you're going to look great and be all together, but then your guests are going to be falling off or muffled. And Sade, who joined us last week, talked about how she did an interview like that, where one of her interviewees had a strange backdrop, another interviewee in the same call kept dropping in and out. So this is a session where you're going to want to really pay attention, do a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of planning, and if possible, talking about what kinds of equipment they have. And as you get bigger, sending them cheap pieces of equipment to like that'll work on the day of, and that you can let them have. The other approach to this is more of the explainer. And Josephina, it really sounds like this was something that was a bit more appealing to you in your approach to this, where you wanted to perhaps talk about something, provide a background for it, and maybe not be on screen as much, very much a voiceover with explanatory video and some takeaway. And we've already talked a lot about B-roll and the sources and how important it is for this type of setup in particular. So you in this fellowship are going to have access to Envato Elements, and the prices of these stock sort of video banks have really come down over the years, and they've also become much more diverse in the types of subjects that they have and that they provide. In the past, that was very challenging. You used to have to buy these discs that had like 6 or 7 photos on it, and they were extremely expensive. Now you can get into like story blocks. We have a Envato Elements. It's $60 a month. We have it fully unlimited. It costs a little over $100 a year. There's also more elevated stock footage that's out there as well, though the cost does go along with it. These are free B-roll sources. So when you're using Canva and the like, they have a partnership with Pexels and Pixabay to have access to their stock. It's not quite as good, I can tell you, as Envato Elements, but it does work in a pinch. And then, of course, if you've ever been on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok, their live streaming is very powerful and an important place to think about, like how to capture in the spot, in the moment sort of events and places. This might be something that you do when you are on site at a conference, or perhaps if you are more in a political bent and you're doing a lot of advocacy work, perhaps you're doing some man in the street sort of videos. And here you can sort of see the setup is a little bit different. So where this would demand more of like a control thing with a slide deck, having quality voiceover mic, maybe a nice video camera, or here, you know, a good solid quality iPhone or Android camera. Talk show, having the Zoom. Here, having more of a setup with maybe even a boom mic if you're just doing a one-on-one or a solo sort of recording. Here with the live stream, you're going to want to definitely have that lavalier mic so you can mic someone else up as well. You're going to want to protect your recording as in addition, perhaps with like a windscreen. If you know, this is like something that protects your mics from folks who are using a lot of sibilant, like the word S uses that hissing sound and protects your pieces from like wind coming in if you're recording outside. And then you're also going to want to have some backup support as well through different equipment. And here, Emily's not on today, but certainly, you know, her work really lends itself to kind of recording a sort of man on the street interviews with her work in outside of Boston. And then, of course, there's also the sort of narrative docu-series style, again, heavy B-roll, perhaps with some interviews and the like that you sort of splice in, and then you providing sort of overarching context for this all. You know, this is also an important place when you're doing this type of podcast to have more finished touches with music and sort of a bumper at the beginning and ending, credits and the like. So lots of different approaches, lots of different styles. Josephina, Abiola, when you were looking through these different types of formats with me, what came to mind for you? Like what is standing out that's something you think you might be doing in your podcast? Abiola, let's start with you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So when we were looking through these different formats of how to do recordings, as opposed like on your own, talk show interview style, explainer, docuseries style, like what jumped out at you is like what you might be using in your approach?
The talk show interview style is actually, uh, the one that resonates well with me. I wouldn't want us um, to just be dogmatic in our approach. Okay, we're here for questioning. We ask the question, you answer, and then we're done. So I would like it to flow properly. We don't have to force anything. In fact, from the conversation, I may not even have to use the questions that I have prepared. Questions may pop up from the conversation that we're having. We make it progressive until we reach a climax. So I think this kind of resonates well with me, the talk show interview.
Yes, yes. And when I was putting this together, I was thinking this might be something that would be of interest to you. You can see I put your name here.
Yeah.
Josephina, how about yourself?
I also think the talk show style resonates with me. Yeah, I have people in mind that I want to interview, and I think that would be a nice setup. And then I think that will probably be my main setup, and then the I think the first one maybe was the solo interview.
Yeah, this
Um,
one.
Yeah, I could potentially see like one episode kind of like this. And then I was thinking about with the B-roll or other types of footage, trying to find. I do like when I see videos that have footage or content, visual content that's really specific to and like matches the audio. So I was trying to think about potentially like if I'm talking about something specific to Boston, like looking for Boston photos I could use or videos and things like that.
I feel like what you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like speaks to what we did with Saad's video, where adding that kind of visualization just elevated the conversation a bit with his. Do you agree, or is that what you're thinking
Oh,
about?
yes, yes. Yeah, I like that example a lot.
Um, So we'll have to hear if Emily is interested at all in entering any of this live stream. That always seemed very high stakes as far as I'm concerned in terms of recording. So I had here some setups or profiles of different podcasts that are very popular and have gained a lot of traction. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask, like, what podcasts are you all listening to yourself?
I listen to Trevor Noah.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Yes.
and that it gives me an idea of that. The same thing with the talk show interview. I listened to one of the interviews he had. Can't remember the name of the guy. He didn't prepare any question. He just started to when the first met. He started from when they first met, and discussed what happened that time. And from there, he started developing questions upon questions. It was as if he planned everything, whereas he never planned it. He just knew he was going to sit down with this guy to have conversation. He didn't know how it would go, but it went well. So I listened to Trevor Noah. I listened to Jay Shetty and some other people too. But those two are
It's
my major.
fabulous. Yes. It sounds like you also like you admire his ability to kind of he can really think on his feet and still get the
Exactly.
story. Yeah.
Yes.
And very engaging too. So it's a good one. Josephina, is there anyone for you?
I've been trying to look at different mental health related podcasts to see kind of what's out there, especially in community mental health. And then I like this podcast. I think it's with NPR called Code Switch. And I think I like how they are able to kind of delve into a lot of complex topics in a pretty short amount of time, like less than an hour. And they have really, like
Hey
you said,
everyone, you're listening to
and
I love,
then
yeah, this is
um
it's a great one, right?
yeah, I like Code Switch a lot. And then kind of a lighter one that I happened on recently was Good Hang with Amy Poehler, I think.
Oh,
And
yes.
she interviews like other celebrities, and I haven't listened to it that much, but I just liked her very like conversational, like very personable and friendly atmosphere she creates. Like it's less of an interview and just kind of a fun conversation, and it takes a lot of different like twists and turns.
Yeah, you bring up this, she's a very good example of someone who's more in like the entertainment space, and Trevor Noah as well, but they often can talk a lot about health, and from a different viewpoint, where she talks a
Mhm.
lot about maternal and child health from her own experiences. And certainly Trevor Noah talks about his experiences as well and its impact on mental health. And he produced an entire show during the pandemic from his apartment. So, and I believe in New York City. So that was a fascinating piece, and one that I admire is Oni Dr. Oni Blackstock. This is hers. I have the volume down on it, but very simple approach. These are folks who have um, Trevor Noah has obviously a larger sort of studio working behind him, and NPR as well. But these are all podcasts that don't have that are easily to replicable with a phone and a bit of B-roll, as we were doing before.
the Code Switch.
These folks are not doing anything that's way out of our reach. And I also liked it earlier, Abiola, when you talked about having closed captions. We'll be talking about next week when we talk about uploading and social media. But what's great about these is the focus on story, and what each one of you talked about was not necessarily about the bells and whistles that each one brought, but that they were well produced and were welcoming, and their look and feel communicated exactly what the elocutor wanted you to take away. So truly about that canvas, that thought thread, and what the platform was meant to do, the persona, the person who was doing the communication of the message, and how they were reaching and engaging and activated their listeners. So these are 6 podcasts that are very popular and have large followings, and actually very replicable approaches. So this is the Pulse, and they do their visualizations just with a picture and literally a
Came to
pulsing
prep you to
image.
say, look, you're going to see
And
things.
the
But as time
information
went
that they're
on,
getting
I
out that
became
week,
more
this is one
withdrawn.
of their
I came
more
disconnected
promotional
to my family.
pieces. The same with Sawbones and his podcast Will Kill You. And Bodies, you can see right away from the imagery that they're using, the type of voice that they're wanting to communicate, what they want you to take away from it. This is much more serious versus this one's a bit more tongue in cheek. And let's go through the canvas persona and audience for one of these so that we can keep that in mind as we move on to an activity where we do the same. And we'll also be talking about how we're going to do our setup and then like for our recording and content generation process. So this is the pulse. And you could see earlier when I showed you that little clip from it, it was very simple, nothing quite earth-shattering. You have the picture. This could easily just be a video of the person presenting as well. So, but what they're talking about is health, science, and innovation. And it's being distributed specifically by NPR, National Public Radio, in the United States. NPR is a very classic organization. It's larger and it's meant to be, I almost say genteel, but it is not something that's going to look like Amy Poehler's Good Hang. It's going to be much more academic and measured in its approach. So here you have the image, and that piece that I showed you just a moment ago really speak to that. They want to communicate a matter of trust and equitable voice and something that's very polished. So the persona here really speaks to that as well. They sound very much like a reporter, and you can tell the type of equipment they have in place. They're going to have probably a noise canceling mic or one that's set up for a studio that has foam and everything to capture any ambient noise. Their listener is going to be probably someone who is seeking very evidence-based, non-emotive information that's going to be trustworthy. They are going to be using like probably a more elevated kit, if you will, because they are working at a larger studio. So they probably will have over the ear mics. They'll probably work in a studio where they'll be able to track the noise levels and everything, as well as with more traditional editing tools. This is more of, this is a less developed sort of podcast. This is much, when I say less developed, I mean less sophisticated in terms of its video presentation. This podcast, let's see right here. You can see they just have an image in its place. However, they're appealing to their audience. The audience is coming to listen predominantly to their content. They're also folks who want to hear peer-led kind of commentary about emergency room medicine, and they're also looking for continuing education credits. So they want that evidence-based piece, that trustworthy voice. That's what they're getting with this particular podcast. And the persona here is keeping that in mind in the way that they've recorded. They've done this in a studio or even probably in a closet that's, blocked out all ambient sound, very much a radio quality sort of sound to their piece. Oops. And that's also going to be reflected in their kit. They probably would engage with guests through Zoom or Zencastr or another online recording software where they can make sure they capture things locally as well. And using a condenser mic again, because they're going to be recording in like a safe, secure sort of environment. Very much speaking to and keeping with persona, canvas persona, and then the audience as well. So this part just kind of keeps this pattern in mind, that the host persona is driving the recording mode, and that that it couples properly, and they also can make sure that it's married to those who are remote from them as well as in person. Their audience's activity and their needs are going to be driving their format. So this emergency medicine one, where folks are looking for something they can listen to on the fly, perhaps earn some CMEs, this is not something they're going to want to watch or see a lot of B-roll or be, quote unquote, entertained in a visual sort of way. That's very different than what you want from Code Switch or from Amy Poehler's Good Hang or Trevor Noah's. These are also podcasts that, when they interview the folks who started these, they started out very cheap. They started with their phone. They started out with a very basic recorder and they moved up. They also have made sure that when they do record with someone, even if they're away from them, that they are recording in the cloud as well as getting a local recording to make sure they have that backup. And as they grew, they made sure that the platform that they were using grew with them. So knowing when to translate from that DIY, which is where we are, into working with a studio and knowing how that's going to benefit or perhaps limit what they're doing and communicating to their listeners. As noted before, and we've talked about this a couple of times, most of you are going to be recording remote from those you are interviewing. So it's really important to have that planning in place before you get to that time. So you're going to want to have these conversations very clearly with your interviewee. How are they going to be recording themselves on their video? How are they going to be recording their audio? Making sure that you're able to get a local recording of their audio as well as capture it online. The other thing with the same with their video. These are things that can't be fixed after the conversation is over. You're also going to want to make sure that you are able to capture your guest in 1080 or above, like preferably in 4K, as well as yourself. It's going to be very strange if your guest is very low resolution and you're high resolution, right? So just some things that are you're going to want to keep in mind. Knowing your guest hardware is important because the quality is going to change. If they don't have equipment, if they do what Saad did and just record far away, they're going to sound muffled. Try to get them equipment, try to give them advice, keep a list of equipment that you can share with your interviewee, just so that they know what they need for the day of. You're going to want to do a lot of testing in advance to make sure that you can hear one another and that the recording is going to work well. So in addition to maybe meeting right before the interview, you might want to have a meeting a day or two before in case you need to either send them equipment or have them go out and get it themselves. When you're recording to the cloud, the default is 720. For Zoom, you can increase that. And that's also important why you also want to record locally as well so that you can have a higher resolution in that respect. So ideally, sometimes it's just going to be nicer if you can record in person with someone, though the reality of that is pretty limited. But when the opportunity does come up, don't let that chance go to waste. Try to always keep your equipment with you. I always ride around with my little lavalier mics in my purse. And I have my settings ready to go and my little light, just in case I need it for that type of situation. So when it comes to planning out your pieces, there's some decisions you need to make. How planned am I going to be? When it comes to the interviews, especially the
more important a person is, and when I say more important, the busier they are, the more advanced they are in their career, you're going to want to provide them with very clear sort of run a show of what's going to happen during your engagement. Provide them the questions in advance. Be very clear about what the mission and vision is of your particular podcast, going over, you want to talk about what that Canva is, your persona, and the types of listeners you're expecting, because that's going to really change how folks are going to engage with you. So in that case, this is very much like an outline, if you will, of what is going to happen when you're filming. The script is when you are, obviously, if you're like caught for time, if you're doing an intro and an outro, winging it is probably not the best way to do that. You're going to want to have that built out so you know how much time is coming in at the beginning and the end. There's nothing more torturous than watching someone wing it on a video when it comes to something that people anticipate is going to be scripted. So most of the time you're going to have like a hybrid, very much a scripted cold open and outro, doing that word for word. You're going to want to, in the middle, especially like with your guests and the like, you're going to have that outline of what's in place, but you do want some play to have some sort of spontaneity and excitement in the interview. Otherwise, it's going to be feel a little staid. And then the editing piece, we've talked about this already to a great deal of extent, but here in the slides, these are just a bit more information about the different types of editors that are out there and available to you. And we're going to look at Opus next week in terms of creating social media. Opus will take, raw video and turn it into different clips with captions, as you were talking about, Aviola, and other sort of, audio fixes that you can do, and B-roll right there in the same place. It's very powerful. In terms of audio helpers, there are some things that you can do. AI can help. I can tell you though, just as a warning, it can start making things sound a little too inhuman. If you do too much voice enhancement, you can make a human being sound like more AI than some actual AI out there. So just a bit of warning. And then this sort of screen record and video editing software, we are also offering access to Camtasia along with Canva, which will really put you in a good place in terms of moving forward and pressing record. So
it is free with us. The expression offering sounds like because you have the $300 there. We've already paid the money, everyone.
we've already paid it.
Will be free
Yes.
for all of you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Carpenter. Yes, it's being offered free. It's being provided, I should say, free to all of you. So please avail yourself of that. It's a good training ground as well. The platforms often are very intuitive to use. And of course, you can always come to me and other folks on staff here for help. We're going to be talking more about Substack next week in terms of how afterward you can create sort of a world to host and push out your podcast to the world. This is you probably have seen folks using Substack already. If you watch the news, a lot of folks who are reporters use Substack to push out their content. We use it primarily to share different things that we're doing with folks, but other folks who are doing like sort of thought leadership, writing blogs, reporting podcasts, they push them out through Spotify, through Substack. And one of the reasons why it's so popular is because it's absolutely free. And it offers this sort of all-in-one hosting, and it takes away some of the guesswork of doing podcasting. So this is just some of the
things that are available when you're using Substack in terms of hosting. You can do an e-newsletter and push out your podcast that way, and sort of building that audience and capturing them, if you will. This is just some information about how to set up your podcast, and then just some examples of how to do different podcast approaches using this particular platform. And this is some information about how to make Substack very powerful for you. And Substack is always increasing its, how you can use it, and improving its different sort of tools that are available with it. And the same goes for Spotify. Spotify is another place where obviously a lot of podcasts live and are accessed, and you can promote yours there as well. We're not going to talk about it at length today, but because we're going to be working with you to like publish your podcasts for this particular fellowship. But it's worth it to note that Spotify used to have a great deal of expense associated with it, and they've created this, get started with your podcast in 10 minutes, and it can be free of charge right here. So we're going to be doing an activity around your first podcast, and we're going to talk about it in 4 sentences. So Abiola and Josephina, and those who are watching, let's take 5 minutes, and looking at time here, let's take 3 minutes and just fill out these 4 sentences, because these 4 sentences are going to shape activity 2, where we're going to talk about how we're going to record and work on and create our podcast. So let's take a little moment, and we'll reconvene at 3:45.
Hi, Cersei. Where are they filling you just
They can just fill it out
on a note?
On a note, yes.
Okay.
And then I have this up, so I'll just make this a little bit bigger. So the first thing is thinking about your canvas and like referring back to what we did last week with Dr. Carpenter about what your show is called. It's about X, and the promise of it is this. Like, what is that thought leadership about? And then the second is about your persona, like who you are at the mic. I'm a social epidemiologist, and while recording, I'll be doing blank, and this is the type of recording approaches that we reviewed. And then who is my listener, and what are they doing? Are they listening intently? Are they studying? And then like we're going to talk about this sort of action. We won't say Substack or whatever, but what you're going to do to get started and like having a space to create. I should have some music playing or something. So we'll take another 30 seconds. Okay. So let's come back and Abiola, do you want to walk us through your 4 sentences here, your fill in the blanks?
Sorry, Dr. Ceci. At the start of this meeting, I told Mr. Bath that I will be driving all through the meeting
Oh,
because I have something. So I've been driving and I've been using
oh my
100% of
goodness.
my brain to
I
to
did
do
not
all of
realize
this.
you were
Uh,
driving. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to
So
put you
I
on the
can't really
spot.
see the screen, so
Oh,
I, I'm not really sure.
well,
Sorry.
well, I hope you
But
enjoyed the little music break, but
of course,
yeah, but
that was that was a relief.
so
I can always, when I get to my destination, sorry,
oh,
when I
don't
get to my
even.
destination, I can even email what I
So why
think.
don't we do this?
See.
I'm gonna
Okay.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna go to Josephina. She's gonna answer the questions, and then maybe you could do 1 or 2. I'll just ask
Okay.
them to you directly. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Josephina.
Yes. So I wrote down that my show is called Community Wellness, about community-led and community design solutions for mental health equity. And um, we will be sharing community innovations, frontline practices, and research about mental wellness. And I'm a public health professional, researcher, and advocate. And while recording, I'll be interviewing guests over Zoom or in community spaces. And my listeners will hopefully be public health practitioners, community leaders, policymakers, or community members who are listening while they're commuting or um, working or studying, um, and who want practical and evidence-based and community designed ideas for advancing mental health equity in their own communities. And then by May 11th, I will order my USB mic. And then I said by June 1st, set up my Substack.
No. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
Quick
So
question.
yes.
All
Go
right, so
ahead.
thank you so much for that, Josephina. My quick question is, I thought we were doing All Fellows, they're going to be on our Substack. Is that changed?
No, they are. They are. I
Oh, I
that
just
was
was
just
using the example in here, but
Gotcha.
yeah.
yeah, I guess then I don't need to set up my Substack. Maybe I'll need your Substack by June 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to check. Yeah, you guys will be able to put your podcast on the BCPH Substack because we obviously have a lot more people to see it. After the podcast ends, you obviously can, definitely start your own Substack afterwards. But just to clarify for obviously you guys and then anybody who's listening to this recording.
No, thank you. I did I mentioned it earlier, but it always I think we just to reiterate, especially since this little example here was a bit confusing. Thank you very much. Abiola, I didn't know if you wanted to try, if you wanted to like maybe tell us what your show is called and what it's about, and then talk about maybe the audience, like who do you think your listener is going to be and what they might be doing while they're listening?
All right. My name is Apiola Ayodele, an environmental health and safety advocate, and this is Let's Talk EHS. That's the title of the podcast. Let's Talk EHS. Conversations on health, safety, and the systems that shape our lives. We're going to be exploring workplace safety, mental health, occupational risks, technology in safety, public health, and organizational systems. So those who are my audience will be policymakers, workers, organizations in health and safety, and also in public health. So is there any other thing I need to answer?
No.
All right.
It was very good, and it was actually most impressive with you driving. So fabulous, both of you. I mean, that was really great, especially since I'm putting you on the spot. So I just wanted to link that, the idea of the persona, the canvas, the persona, and the who your audience is and how we do that kind of recording. I wanted to profile the next big voices in health, and that's like all of you. So Josephina, just looking at your podcast here, this idea of community care and community-led solutions for mental health equity. I was thinking, just as you said, the idea of being an educator and a friend, that sort of evidence-led conversations, thoughtful engagement. And then the setup was, when I was envisioning yours, was going to be more hybrid, something in person, maybe on occasion. And if it is remote, having that more conversational feel. It's a little bit different than what you had talked about in terms of having more of an explainer or that one person approach with the B-roll. So, and then right next, very conveniently, is Abiola, looking at your style and matching it to your canvas, persona, and audience, thinking of you as an investigator and an advocate, someone who has that sort of steady, probing, mission-driven conversations with your interviewees. And then most of your setup, as you noted, is going to be mostly remote, with people calling in from different countries, engaging them and finding workarounds to create really high quality content that is convenient for those with whom you are working. So whereas maybe a signature move for you, Josephina, might be sort of short, field minutes with community members, like quick interviews or snippets that you capture from them. Abiola might open every episode with like a 30-second safety audit of a workplace story, something to draw the listener in, kind of something to make that abstract issue of workplace safety really, really concrete. So you're going to have access to these slides, obviously, so you will be able to look more about the sort of proposed envisioned style of your podcast that I came up with, and marrying it to your own. And then also our other fellows who weren't able to join us today, they have their own profile as well here. So for the next few minutes, let's think about each of you, just kind of like how you're going to build your recording space. And this is an opportunity to also kind of steal each other's ideas. I know, Abiola, that you are driving, but what we're going to want to think about is just how you're going to set up your space. Where you are going to record? Are you going to be in a closet? Are you going to have access to perhaps an office at your school or workplace? How are you going to keep it from being interrupted by ambient noise? And where's your laptop? Where's your camera? where's your recording device, and so on. So think about where all those pieces are going to be and kind of map them out in your mind. And for you, Josephina, you can draw it. So if we go back to my own little schematic, I can to find it here, but you can do something similar. Obviously, I did this online. Let me share it again. Just kind of thinking how you're going to do your setup. So let's do that for like the next 3 minutes and just think about where your camera, where your audio recording, where your guests are going to be, just sort of thinking of the schematic. So let's do 3 minutes and then we'll regroup. My God. Okay, well, I think that we can come back. So, Josephina, let's start with you. In terms of, I didn't know if you had a chance to like actually sketch out your space or if you just want to walk us through where you're going to do your recording, where's your equipment going to be, and also just kind of how is this going to be supporting the vision that you have for your podcast?
Yeah, I can kind of talk through. I didn't sketch everything out. I was kind of just like jotting down notes
That's okay.
for each of these or a few of the different components that you were
That's great.
showing us today. But um I was trying to think a little bit about this because I do think I will be probably traveling to different like community spaces or people's homes even to do some of the interviews. So just generally trying to make sure that there's um I have a good microphone
Mhm.
for both myself and the person I'm interviewing, to make sure that the audio, which is like one of the most important pieces, can be picked up, even if it's not necessarily like the quote unquote ideal kind of like recording or like podcasting location. And then if I am in someone's um, home, for example, like making sure there's a neutral
Mhm.
background, and then the camera, some of the components that you were talking about, like having the camera kind of like at eye level and like not too close, but not too
Mhm.
far. So like having time for that setup beforehand and before we begin. Um, and then in my own space, having either starting out with maybe just like a plain background or some sort of backdrop on Zoom, like we saw in your example. Or I do have some different pieces of like community art, for example, that could be nice to have on the wall. Um, and then for the microphone, I think, as I mentioned before, I'll start out with like a pair of like headphones that I already have and then like kind of expand from there. So that's probably what I would use first. Um, and I do have a pretty like small room, so maybe that would help absorb some of the different sounds already. But um, yeah, just making sure that like I have the windows closed and different elements to try to keep or minimize like some background noise. Um,
Mhm.
and then for lighting, I do have this like free like clip-on light that you can like put on your computer that I actually
Mhm.
never used. I kind of, but I got it like I think 2 years ago from some sort of like community event, and I was like, oh, it's free
Mhm.
light. So maybe that will
Yeah,
be a good starting point for me for the lighting.
great starting point. I think what I'm hearing is um, is that what you're describing also really speaks to what your podcast is about, which is about community voices. You're going out into the community. You're thinking about how to shine a light on community with even like your backdrop by focusing on art. And I was thinking about, and Dr. Carpenter noted here, is you're going to have more challenges too if you're going to be going and visiting people on site. So you're going to want to think through like, oh, am I going to need a tripod to hold my camera? Um, or am I going to have to use some books? How am I going to sort out like noise situations if I'm in someone else's space, and they have kids or, an annoying cat or dog or something. Well, cats can never be annoying, but you know what I mean. Um, so it's lots and lots of questions to think about and really like being planning very much in ahead and being very strategic in your approach to each different session, because when you start going into different locations for each different podcast, that's each like individualistic experience that you need to plan for. Dr. Carpenter.
Yeah, no problem. I know we're just kind of finishing up here, so I'll make it brief. I did want to say, Josephina, I know it probably sounds easier to go to people because you're more, I feel like you're probably thinking it's easier to schedule them if I do that. It does sound more of like a researcher journalistic approach as opposed to what a podcaster would do. But I do want to underline it will be a lot more challenging than you realize. Because you will have to go into an environment that you do not control, as opposed to everything with Dr. Cersei's lecture today has been controlling the podcasting environment. So
Mhm.
if you do that, I would anticipate probably having much more chaos, having to get there
Mhm.
much earlier than you would anticipate, and then also possibly having to edit a lot more from your podcast. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there in case you were at anywhere flexible in changing how you might approach it, because I can just see far more chaos and far more headache for you than it being like, something that works well.
Yeah,
My
thank you
others,
for.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Josephina.
Oh no, I was just gonna say thank you for that. That is very helpful. Yeah, I guess I was thinking maybe if there's little, also maybe like little sound bites from um uh program or a meeting like that I could get with permission.
Mhm.
And then yeah, that's a really helpful perspective. I think I'm just used to kind of going to people where they are,
Mhm.
kind of like with any sort of like programming or health services, like kind of like for accessibility, but maybe that's um yeah, it would even be like a nicer experience for them if we do it over Zoom, because then they sound better and like the audio quality and their voice will come across better. So I'll definitely, yeah, maybe think about starting on Zoom first.
It's a
Y-
trade-off for sure, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Cersei.
Oh no, I was also definitely, Dr. Carpenter, is a trade-off. The other option you may want to consider is if you are engaging with community members, perhaps you could meet at a service location or like some sort of like triangulation point where they're going to be going there anyway. You could set up an office or something that has a controlled space, controlled environment in terms of ambient noise, get there maybe a couple days beforehand and set that up if you don't have that already. That's another way if you do want to meet people in person, as opposed to, that's setting up one sort of remote site instead of like 5 or 6, you know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah, like even the public library I know has some
yes,
rooms that are you can book, and then I could kind of set things up there.
yes, yes. So,
Thank you.
you know, the other thing is when you're in someone else's space, the having that extra layer of worry, like, am I capturing everything that they're saying right now? Because maybe you feel a little awkward about checking sound or whatever. Um, it you don't want to have anything extra. It's going to be challenging enough to like move forward and make sure you get things recorded and everything with a controlled space. Adding in an extra layer is not going to be enjoyable. Dr. Carpenter, did I cut you off before? I did not mean to.
Oh, I'm all set. I know we need to wrap up.
Yes, yes. Abiola, I wanted to give you a chance, even though you're driving, um, about your approach to all this. What do you envision as your ideal recording space in terms of your mic, your computer? Are you recording at home, at the school?
All right, thank you. I worked with the school one time for I worked on a proposal to get grants for a social media lab in the school, which we already have, and we already have a podcast studio in the school. So the only challenge I have with that is the aesthetics. I really do not like how they beautify the place. It's too rowdy. It's shouting chaos. And another challenge is that it's summer and I'm having my internship. We travel to Indiana. So I have two things. Either I travel like on weekends to record and just have record 2 or 3 episodes,
Okay.
different guests, or with
Mhm.
what Fina said. I think printing a backdrop, having a backdrop that I can travel with will help.
Oh,
Because I've been thinking in my head, yes, I'm gonna steal that idea because I've been thinking in my
have artwork will
for a
travel and
particular
agrees.
episode, and then yeah,
Um,
and then the
and a,
next episode, I have to use another um I have to use another background. So that consistency will not be there. So having the backdrop will help me.
mhm,
I can travel with it. I already have the
and
microphones. I already have everything, and I'm not just gonna be in the studio. There are some episodes I have to be on the field to do what I call vox pop, get people's opinion and ideas on a particular subject matter, and then my guests in the studio will have to do analysis on those vox pop. So I already have all of those things set ready for me to get started. The only thing I need is the lighting, which I was going through. And thank you, Dr. Sessi. You've mentioned some good lighting that one could get. Um, at a cheaper rate. So I'm going to get on that too, and I'll be set.
Fabulous. Fabulous. This is very exciting. The idea of having to do this while traveling and challenging as well. But green screens are your friend. And I love the fact that both of you have been thinking this through and thinking about how your final product is going to speak to what you wanted to communicate in terms of story and persona and for your audience. And so excellent, excellent work. I know today was a ton of information. And next week, we're going to what we do after we press publish. You know, we don't want to disappear. All the things that we can do to get people to come back to us. These are just some notes here that you can look at. We're going to be talking a lot about shorts and reels and little TikToks, newsletters. And this Substack or whatever, that's for after, you know, now we're going to be publishing. For now, you don't need to worry about that. You can publish, we're going to be publishing on ours, but just to kind of like keep things in mind and keep that momentum forward as you go through the program. So thank you so much for your attention today. I know it was a lot of information, but again, just sort of parting with like, you know, the voices reshaping the public health did not wait for the perfect studio. Neither do you. They just press record, and that's what you're going to do as well. But hopefully with today's talk, you can do it with some intention and with some planning and strategy in place. So with that,